Our story begins in Strasbourg in the year 1518. At that time, this region was part of the Holy Roman Empire, and it was here, during the summer, that a truly bizarre incident unfolded. It all started with one woman, Frau Troffea. In July, she stepped out of her home and, for no apparent reason, began to dance in the street, all by herself. This wasn't a joyful celebration, nor was it for any festival. That was the peculiar thing. No music played, no discernible cause, and her face remained expressionless. She just danced and danced. She didn't stop for several days, continuing day and night until her feet were raw and swollen. The entire city, her neighbors, everyone was utterly perplexed. This was almost unbelievable, but as it turned out, this was merely the first case. Within a week, some 30 to 40 other people began to dance in the exact same fashion. Was it by imitation or some kind of illness? To this day, that remains a puzzle. By August, the number of those caught in this dancing mania had swelled to nearly 400. 400 people in what was then a relatively small city. A staggering figure. And were they all right, aside from the compulsive dancing? Far from it. They were in immense pain, their arms and legs flailing in uncontrolled movements. Eyewitnesses described people screaming, weeping, and pleading for relief, yet they were powerless to stop their dance. It was a horrifying spectacle. And inevitably, there were fatalities. The continuous, exhausting motion led to severe fatigue, dehydration, and for some, heart attacks. Contemporary accounts suggest that as many as 15 people were dying each day. This was no less than an epidemic. So what did the city authorities, the physicians, do in response? What were they thinking? They too were deeply confused. Initially, the physicians believed the cause was hot blood, a common medical theory of the time. Hot blood? This essentially meant they believed an excess of natural heat had spread throughout the bodies of the afflicted, and their proposed cure was even more astonishing. What treatment did they suggest, you ask? They prescribed that these people should dance even more. More dancing? The very thing that was killing them was proposed as the cure? What kind of logic was that? It seems strange to us today, but their reasoning was that by dancing continuously, this supposed excess heat would be expelled from the body. So what did they do next? They officially had stages erected in open public spaces. They hired musicians and even professional dancers, perhaps to guide the afflicted into dancing correctly and thus heal themselves. And what was the result of this intervention? Did people get better? No, quite the opposite occurred. Perhaps it was the availability of free food and drink or the atmosphere created. But even more, people came and joined the ranks of the dancers. Good heavens, so these medical interventions completely failed. What did people think then? Surely they must have looked for other explanations. Indeed, in that era, religion and superstition held immense sway. So the idea became prevalent that this was the wrath of a saint named Saint Vitus. Saint Vitus? Yes, a Christian saint. People believed Saint Vitus had sent this affliction as punishment for their sins. Consequently, the phenomenon also came to be known as Saint Vitus's dance. So then, the treatment must have become religious in nature? Precisely. The afflicted dancers were forcibly taken to the shrine of Saint Vitus. They were made to wear red shoes, upon which holy oil had been applied, and prayers were offered. And what measures were taken in the city itself? Gamblers, sex workers, essentially anyone deemed sinful, were expelled from the city. Public dancing and music were banned. All this was the reaction. But what do modern experts, scientists, say today? What could have been the cause? Well, No single cause has been definitively proven, but several theories exist. The most widely accepted theory is that of mass psychogenic illness, or MPI. Mass psychogenic illness, what is that? It's an illness that can spread from one person to another, often triggered by stress. So what kind of pressure existed in Strasbourg at that time? Oh, it was immense. The years leading up to 1518 had been terrible. There had been famine, widespread poverty, and rampant diseases like smallpox, plague, syphilis, and a strange illness known as the English sweat. There was the constant threat of war. People were deeply superstitious, and faith in the church was also waning. In short, there was despair and fear everywhere. So, all this pressure manifested in the form of this dancing plague? Yes. Experts like the historian John Waller believe precisely that it was, in a way, a collective reaction of the entire society. Another theory involves ergot poisoning. Ergot poisoning? What is that? It's a fungus, the ergot fungus, which grows on damp rye. If bread made from contaminated rye is consumed, it can cause hallucinations, convulsions, and neurological problems. So, could this have been the cause? Some believe so, but there's an issue with this theory. Ergot poisoning usually causes erratic jerks or movements, not the kind of organized, continuous dancing that lasted for days. That isn't fully explained by ergotism. So, the likelihood points more towards mass psychogenic illness? Yes, most experts lean in that direction because it aligns better with the social and psychological conditions of the time. Perhaps this dancing was a subconscious way to escape an unbearable reality. It's also heard that this wasn't the first or the last such incident in Europe. Actually, that's correct. Similar outbreaks of dancing mania had been reported before, for instance in 1021, 1247, and notably in 1374 in some regions of Germany and France. So it was a pattern, so to speak. Well, when and how did this episode in Strasbourg finally end? That's just as mysterious. In September 1518, after about 2 months, the dancing frenzy subsided on its own. People gradually stopped dancing, and the epidemic came to an end. On its own? No specific reason was discovered. No definitive cause has ever been found. It remains a historical enigma to this day. Truly an astonishing and somewhat terrifying story. It compels one to think about what the human mind, especially under collective pressure, is capable of. Absolutely. Belief, fear, social tension. These things can have such a profound impact on our bodies and our behavior. And it also raises the question, in today's world, where the forms of pressure have changed and the flow of information is so rapid, could something like this happen again? Perhaps in a new form? That is an important question. This event forces us to contemplate the complexities of human psychology and how deeply we are affected by our surroundings.